Welcome to the Action Network podcast, and today we have a very special NFL episode. As he does every season, one of Action Network's most obsessive experts scours the betting landscape for the 2025 team, or teams for that matter, that he's going to be going from worst to first in their respective division. Everywhere in this sports betting content space, I'm sure you've heard, hey, Kansas City's going to be pretty good. Hey, Buffalo's going to be pretty good. Well, no, we're going dumpster diving here. We're going to the bottom here to see who is going to be going from worst to first. Who is going to be improved? There are always those teams that were bad last year that end up having really good seasons. Washington Commanders, perfect example. Won 4 games last year or 2 years ago, and then won 12 this year. But by the way, if you're wondering who this voice is, I'm new Action Network contributor Wes Reynolds. Been betting on and covering NFL football for more years than I would care to admit. You'll be hearing me on a number of action shows this upcoming NFL season. But today I'm delighted to be joined by Action Network veteran, futures expert Brandon Anderson, who has done a lot of the legwork here on all the divisions. And we're going to go division by division to see if we can find somebody that's going to come from worst to first, shall we say. So, Brandon, welcome in. I'm excited to be with you.
Yeah, glad to have you here at Action West. Glad to get into the division worst to first. This is one of my big ones each fall, one I look forward to every year. This is our chance. This is the Island episode. We'll be revealing at least my first Island of the year. Hopefully a little better than Panthers Island last year. We took water early and never quite recovered. But what is the worst to first concept? Pretty simple, but you get a team, like you said, that last year has, for whatever reason, the season from hell. Everything goes wrong. Get your top draft pick. We focus on all the rookies. Then we spend the whole summer writing them off. Nobody wants their fantasy players on their team, right? And all of a sudden, it's November, December, and they're in the division mix. You win the division. You're hosting a playoff game. So since we got to the new division format, 22 seasons, we have now the data for it. 19 out of those 22 seasons, 86%, we have seen at least one team go worst to first in the division from one year to the next. So just check the last decade, just catch you up on some examples here. 2016, Cowboys. They go from 4 wins to 13. Rookie Dak, rookie Zeke, all the way to the top. 2017 Eagles, all the way really to the top. 7-9, Super Bowl champions the next year. The year after that, Bears, Texans, then Washington the following year. We missed a year. Bengals, all the way to the Super Bowl off of a division last place. Now the fun ones. We started writing these up at Action Network. 2022, Jacksonville, plus 800 ticket, cashes for us. We go right back to the well in the division the next year. Texans Island, that was a fun one if you're along for the ride. Man, that was a sweat and a half and then some more sweat. 1,100 cashes for us on Texans Island. Last year, Wes, you mentioned it. Washington was great. They jumped to 12 wins. No division. Chargers, they went from worst to playoffs. No division. No team went worst to first last year. So it is one of those 3 that didn't happen. But that means we're due, right? That's how gambling works. We're due for a win.
Last year, of course, pretty darn historic year just on a game-by-game basis for favorites. 71% straight up, about 53.5 against the number, and especially road favorites. Road favorites last year, if you love to bet those, which I historically do not, 73.4% and 53.7%. It was a very good year for the chalk last year, as you mentioned. No worst to first last year. We'll see if water so and so finds its level this season, and we get a couple of those underdogs getting to the top.
Yeah, so since the new division format, 2002, we've had 29 teams go worst to first. So it's an average of about 1.26 per season. Now, some books, you can bet on just some team goes worst to first. You don't have to pick one. You can just skip the rest of the podcast. Don't do that. We're going to do better today. But you can bet it at like a minus something or other. Fair odds would be something like minus 600. So probably that's in our favor. Obviously, did not cash last year. But I'm greedy. I want an island team. We're going to go through, like you said, the dregs of the league, really. There's a reason these teams finished last. We're going to go through a lot of like, oh, this team has really improved this year. Yeah, you know why? Because they sucked last year. They were terrible. You have to be a little better. And we're ranking these, as always, in tiers, how I do them. And we're going to go from what I think is the order of worst bet to best bet that you can make, which means at the end of the episode, it's Island time.
Yeah, we got to go through the dreck before we get to the gold here. So let's go ahead and start it, Brandon. This is what you grade as Tier 5. No way, no how. These teams in the division that were last year are going to go to first. And let's go ahead and start in the AFC North. Pretty good at the top there. With obviously we know Baltimore, Super Bowl contender, Cincinnati. They certainly cooked on offense, but they looked cooked on defense. If you watch that preseason game the other night against Washington, and then the Pittsburgh Steelers just do what they do. They've got the voodoo, as our colleague Stuckey calls it. That Tomlin voodoo. They find ways to win. They get out yarded, but they force +3 in the turnover margin and somehow win. So that leaves us with the Cleveland Browns. Give us the outlook in C-Town, Brad.
Yeah, the Browns are last for a reason. We don't have to stay too long on this one. I would say when you're looking for an island, you got to check the archipelago first, right? You got to see what's the surrounding look like, because you're betting on the Browns. You are also betting against the Ravens, Bengals, and Steelers. No, thank you. I prefer not to bet against not just one of those. The Browns have to beat all three of them to win the division, of course. Ravens, for me, are my number one team. You could argue, and I have argued really, that all three of those teams have a top 5 offense or defense. I think the Ravens could end up with both of those things. So that's not great news for the Browns, who have to beat all three of those teams. What is the good news for the Browns? Well, there's not a lot. I like the defense. I think the defense could surprise. Myles Garrett is good as anyone defensively. Jim Schwartz had this unit looking awesome a couple of years ago before they completely fell apart last year. I think Mason Graham, the rookie on the line, he could stabilize things a little bit, let Garrett get outside the wide 9 and just get after the quarterback. They still got to play offense, unfortunately, and I'm not really sure how they're going to do that. We're going to, over under 4.5 Browns quarterbacks that play like 20 snaps this year. I think you got to take the over on that. We got like 5 on the roster, not even counting Deshaun Watson, who's just like around, I guess. We kind of have retread skill players. The line that used to be so good, they got old, man. Like, they're just not what they were anymore. And then, just in case you had some hope left, here's the first 5 games for the Browns. Bengals, Ravens, 0-2 in the division. Then Packers, Lions, Vikings. Sounds like 0-5 to me. Like, anything even better than 1-4 would be a stunning outcome. So this, to me, I do NFL, I do NBA also. This is a tank if ever I've seen one. Like, this is a quiet tank in the NFL. We're just going to see what happens here, but you do not want to be in on the Browns. And frankly, you don't want to be betting against the rest of the division.
Yeah, certainly very top heavy. And I, like you, am very high on our friend Stuckey's Baltimore Ravens this year to go very, very far and perhaps even to the Super Bowl. So, Brandon, let's go with another one that you say no way, no how. And that's the NFC East. And this is a team that I've been hearing a little bit of buzz about, that certainly that there's the potential for them to be improved. And then you look at the top, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Washington Commanders. Washington, by the way, was like 9-2, I believe, in games decided by 7 points or less last year. So is there regression coming for an overachieving Commanders team? Is it coming for Philadelphia, with that Super Bowl hangover? And then Dallas, there's always drama in Dallas. Who knows what's going to happen? It's been 2 decades, by the way, since a division champ has repeated here. But do you think that the New York Giants can challenge for this division this year?
Yeah, so the Giants are plus 3,000. So certainly they should have our attention a little bit, because there's real talent here, at least again, on defense. That defensive line, if you're going to be in on the Giants, that absolutely is where you're starting. Dexter Lawrence. If you're in the Giants, you got to be in on him as a defensive player of the year candidate. He's played as well as anybody for 3 years at least running now. And then you get the pass rushers. They draft Abdul Carter. Now they have him plus Brian Burns plus Kayvon Thibodeau. This defense I rated as number 12. And frankly, I'm a little low on Shane Bowen, the coordinator. I'm not a super believer in the guys they added in the secondary. If I'm wrong about those things, maybe this is a top 5 defense. And maybe, we get every year, it feels like, we talked about the Steelers already, 1 or 2 of those teams where it's like, oh my gosh, how is this a 10-win team? It's like there's no offense happening, but the defense, they just keep pulling rabbits out of their hat.
Don't they always have a good defensive line, though? I mean, this looks like, Strahan and Tuck and Kiwi and OCU Minora, when they had those guys many, many years ago. This is I'm looking at those names. This is a really damn good defensive line.
Yeah, it is. And, Giants fans would remind us that 2 of those really good defensive lines went on to win the Super Bowl, even coming out of a wild card spot, taking down the Patriots, which, we can be thankful for one thing at least. Unfortunately, those defensive lines can only play half the game. And like the Browns, we still have to play offense. And I'm not sure the Giants offense will be much better than the Browns. I had both offenses bottom tier, bottom three in the NFL. Now, obviously, we got Malik Neighbors. He's awesome. I think he's like Terrell Owens 2.0. Left tackle Andrew Thomas is a star. But both of those dudes cannot stay healthy. And there's nothing on this offense outside of those two. And as soon as one of those guys goes out, I think this is the number 32 offense with a bullet, which is saying something in a league with the Browns and the Saints around. It's Russ to start out. It's eventually going to be Jackson Dart, who frankly has looked pretty good in preseason, but is still a rookie. I might feel better about a Giants bet if I knew Jameis was going to play all year. Just give me the volatility, like the bads, but the upside also. I'd rather have the upside there. But even if you're kind of into the Giants, I think you check the schedule, that's the end. Because here's where we go. First 4 games, Washington, Dallas, Kansas City, and the Chargers. Doesn't sound great, but I'll make a case. If we're in because of the defensive line, those are 4 beatable offensive lines. Washington's not very good. Dallas has lost a lot of their guys. Kansas City, we know that that's kind of in flux. The Chargers lost Slater. If you like the Giants, you better like that stretch, because soon after that, here's a 7-week in a row stretch they have. No breaks, no bye weeks. This is just back to back to back. Eagles, Broncos, Eagles, Niners, Bears, Packers, Lions. Holy crap, no thank you. The Giants have to play the entire NFC North, the entire AFC West, and like you said at the top, pretty tough division. You got Super Bowl champs, Washington on the rise. Heck, Dallas won 12 wins 3 seasons in a row before they fell apart last year, so maybe they're in the mix too. Can't get there with the Giants. I like the defensive front, but like you said, the G-men always have the defensive front, but not a lot in the playoffs, so I think we'll pass.
Yeah, that's still a tough division, even though it seems like maybe there's regression for teams in front of them. But how much regression is there going to be? So time will tell on that. So, Brandon, let's transition to Tier 4, which you title Maybe If You Squint, But I Can't Get There. And the NFC South, but both the South divisions really in the NFL, I think the saving grace for every single team in those divisions is it's the South. And that seemingly is all it is. Maybe a little bit more on the AFC side, certainly than the NFC side in recent years. But the New Orleans Saints in the NFC South had the distinction of being last, even though tied record with Carolina. But Saints officially were the last team in the division. And boy, the quarterback situation doesn't really give you a lot to write home about down there on Bourbon Street.
Yeah, it's a mess. The Saints come in at plus 1,600, and man, almost any other team here in the NFL, like 29 teams, I'd probably have them at least like top 3 in our rankings. Any chance to bet against the NFC South, I'm in. I have all 4 teams in this division ranked bottom 10 in the NFL, including the Bucs because of their injuries right now, where I'm really worried about them. I ranked all the offenses, I ranked all the defenses. Neither team or in the division has an offense or defense even top half of the league. The only one was the Bucs offense, but now Wirfs is hurt, Godwin's hurt, McMillan is hurt. They got a tough schedule to start the year. That path is open. Like, you could be 3-4 and leading the division halfway through the season here, but it's the Saints. I have the Saints as the worst team in the NFL by margin. Their offense, I rank dead last. There's really no strength on the offense. I think they have the worst quarterback room in the league, Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler. I'm not high on either guy, and if you're Tyler Shuck and you are like 55 years old already and still can't beat out Spencer Rattler to win the job, I'm not really optimistic about you. The defense, there's talent there, but it's old and has been slowly faltering. Now you lose Dennis Allen. You kind of get the coaching leftovers out of the cycle. There's just not a lot to see here. The Saints open the season 6 of their first 7 games against the defense I had in my top 12. So if you're the worst offense and you're facing all these great defenses, that's just not going to go well. I will say this. They do have, by DVOA, the softest schedule in the second half of the season. So I can't tell you, never bet the Saints, never say never in the NFL. We've seen that happen. But, again, New Orleans is 16-1. A team this bad should be like 50-1 to win the division. They're not, because the NFC South is terrible. So I won't hate you if you want to bet on just randomness, and I don't want to play on the NFC South, but I think you can wait and try that later on. And frankly, I might be looking to wait and invest in a team like the Buccaneers later on. If they do start slow, they're going to have a pretty soft schedule later on as well. I know you are kind of interested in the Panthers here. Technically did tie for last. I don't know if I can do Panthers Island again, man. I did it last year, and Bryce Young sunk me. We lost Derek Brown the first game of the season. What do you like about the Panthers this year?
Yeah, I think a lot of us, maybe we were a little bit of a year early because, of course, Dave Canales came in and we're like, well, look at what he did with Baker Mayfield. He finally found Baker Mayfield a home there, and he had his career year. And then what happens? Canales leaves, and Liam Cohen comes in, and Baker Mayfield has even a better year in Tampa Bay. So, maybe I gave too much credit to Canales because I really thought that he was going to turn around their fortunes. And Bryce Young obviously struggled out of the gate, and then you had Andy Dalton in the middle of the season, but Bryce Young took back over in week 8. He only went 4-6 in those 10 games, but you look, the touchdown interception ratio was 15-6, 62% completion rate, was able to use his legs and run the ball a little bit. Now, a lot of that, to be fair, Brandon, was the short passing game. However, he seemed to get like a better grasp of this offense. So it's like, and I've never really been a huge Bryce Young guy, but it's like, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something salvageable. And he's got, I think, a pretty solid receiving core with Xavier Legette, McMillan out of Arizona, the first-round pick, Adam Thielen. So he's got some big targets out there. The backfield, you not only have Chuba Hubbard, but the South Carolina product, Rico Dowdle, who had over 1,000 yards last year. What I really like about this offense, I think this is one of the better offensive line groups in the league that doesn't get a lot of ink because it's Carolina. They were top 10 in yards per carry. They were top 12 in sack percentage. And they made a lot of moves to upgrade this last year on the interior, Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt. And I think that gives a young quarterback a chance. When you've got an offensive line that a young quarterback that's going to make some mistakes, that's still kind of trying to figure it out, when you have that offensive line, boy, that's a good security blanket. But unfortunately, on the other side of the trenches, that's really where the weakness is. Unless Derek Brown can come back, healthy from that injury and be a real beast, man, this defensive line. I thought the defense was really, everybody points to the offense. I thought the defense was disappointing because I thought Evero was a solid defensive coordinator in Denver. So I thought, okay, he's going to be good in Carolina. They didn't get to the quarterback hardly at all. I think, couldn't sack the quarterback, couldn't stop the run. They got beat 5.2 yards a carry. So this defense could be what holds them back. I'm not even as worried about necessarily the offense. Now, the bye week comes late, too. They're, I believe, week 14, I want to say, is that bye week. So if the young kid, Young, gets off to a slow start, you worry a little bit about that. But I just look at this division, and I think like this is maybe the take a shot division because Carolina, Atlanta, even though Michael Penix did play at Indiana University, he's still essentially a rookie quarterback, as a full-time starter. And Tampa Bay, you wonder, if just regression is coming. I think they're the default favorite, no question about it. And went 10-7, early exit in the playoffs. Really good offense that can certainly cook. But I think that this is division. Maybe you take a shot. Like if I was going to take a shot, it wouldn't be New Orleans. It would certainly be with Carolina at 4.25 or somewhere in that price range.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's definitely, to me, a division I want to take a shot at. I have plenty of doubts on Tampa, as heavy a favorite as they are. And with all the injuries, like I really think, I know folks are talking about Tristan Wirfs. Think about some of the other tackles of his caliber, like Trent Williams, Teron Armstead. When that guy goes out, the entire offense crumbles around them. Look what happened when Trent Williams got hurt last year with the Niners, or every time he gets hurt. Teron Armstead, he goes out and the Dolphins can't block anybody, and the offense suddenly just completely disappears. To me, like we did offensive line rankings, the Chargers lost Rashawn Slater, who is a worse player than Tristan Wirfs, and they dropped from top 10 to bottom 10 in my offensive line rankings. I think the Bucs healthy are like a top 3 offensive line, and the Bucs healthy with receivers are top 7 offense. Last year, they were a top 7 offense. They were awesome. And you mentioned Dave Canales. I think we have to ding him a little bit because Canales leaves the Bucs and they got better. They were a better offense under Liam Cohen, but he's gone now. Now it's Josh Grizzard. And we did see Canales get some results late with the Panthers. So if the Bucs ever get back to what they're supposed to be in October or November, in this division, it might still be enough. But I think right now, I don't mind kind of buying low on a team that you like. And if you need to, you can buy back with the Bucks later on, maybe just have both sides and ride it out. I have been wanting to fade the Bucks for years in this division, which means I have been losing money betting against the Bucks in this division because they always find a way at the end. So I'm a little hesitant, but you're right. Saints are definitely not what's going to entice me to wade into the waters this year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a rough year down in New Orleans. So they've got that loud crowd in the dome. Maybe that's enough to steal a game because they still have a very good home field advantage, but they don't have a very good team on that field for that home field advantage. But a team that maybe there's a little bit of optimism about. I don't think this team, living here, Brandon, the team hasn't taken over the town or anything because there's a lot of road fans that come here. It's a tourist destination. It's not like this team has, I think, built a fan base like certainly the Golden Knights did, and it helps that you get to the Stanley Cup Finals in your first year and have won one since. And so it hasn't taken Las Vegas by storm, but there is a little bit more buzz and a little bit more news about the Raiders in the AFC West. So tell us your outlook on the Silver and Black.
Yeah, and honestly, there should be some more buzz for the Raiders. Finally, we made it to a team number 5 on our list. I get to actually make a positive case for the team, not just argue against the other teams in the division. So the Raiders, 3 things you love about them this year is big floor raising move at running back, quarterback, coaching. So running backs don't matter. It might matter, it turns out, when Zamir White is your guy and runs into the line and falls over. Yeah. Now you got Ashton Genty, who's going to be, we know already, almost certainly a great back and in Chip Kelly's system. I mentioned Chip Kelly. He comes in to run the offense, did a great job at Ohio State. Pete Carroll, an awesome coach, definitely on the older side, but has had great results and great with team culture, which the Raiders badly need, and great with developing young guys, with this team needs a lot. And then at quarterback, from whatever the mess was they threw out last year, to Geno Smith, who I had ranked top 10 in my quarterbacks this year, which I know is a hot take, but I think at the very least, he is a top half of the league quarterback. So you have probably bottom 3 runners, quarterbacks, and coaching staff from a year ago at this time to top half of the league at least. That's a huge just floor raising move on the team that everything has to be a little better. And in the division, there are some reasons to doubt, right? All 3 other teams made the playoffs. So you don't love that as a starting point, but we know the Chiefs offense, regular season at least, is sliding a little bit. You mentioned their line, their receivers. There's some reasons to doubt. Still Mahomes, but we're looking here. The Chargers, we talked about the Slater injury. I think their defense is really lacking talent. I've been very skeptical on the Broncos throughout all the rankings podcasts that we've done. I'm down on just, frankly, everything about them compared to consensus. The problem with the Raiders is you get the floor-raising stuff and you get maybe some opportunity in the division, but what we haven't said is anything about the defense. And this defense, I think, is a bottom 2 defense on paper. I hate to say it, my other one is the Carolina Panthers, but these 2 teams on paper just don't have a lot of talent. And similar to the Panthers, I like the coordinator. Patrick Graham is pretty good at his job and frankly, had this defense playing pretty well late in the season while no one cared anymore. But the guys that were playing well, they're gone now. Robert Spillane, gone. Divine Diablo, gone. Christian Wilkins, Jack Jones, Trevon Moehrig, they're all gone off of the team. And talent-wise, there's not a lot left for the Raiders defensively. And even if the offense is better, they're still maybe optimistically the 3rd best offense in the division. And even if Patrick Graham finds some defense, they're still maybe optimistically the 3rd best defense in the division. So even my best scenario, I have to have the 3rd best offense and defense out of 4. It's a little too far for me. I will say this. I didn't mention the odds. At DraftKings, the Raiders are plus 2,200. So 22 to 1. At FanDuel, they're literally half that at 11 to 1. Just playing the market alone, I don't mind if you nibble the 22 to 1. Just get a little position. I think this division stays a little more compact. For years now, the Chiefs just run away with it. I don't know that will happen this year. So I don't mind just taking the long play as a market play, 22 to 1, but it's not going to be a team that I can believe too far. And I believe in their improvement, but division is too big of an ask. Maybe just like an over game to game is the way to go with the Raiders.
Yeah, certainly improvement. I think definitely with the coaching staff, with Pete Carroll coming out of retirement, seeing if he can get the silver and black back, as a matter of fact, and really for the first time here in Las Vegas. So looking forward to that season. No surprises, folks. NFL season, by the way, kicks off in 2 weeks. And to get the most out of the award-winning Action app, you'll want an Action Pro subscription because only Pro subscribers are going to get the real-time pick alerts from experts like Brandon Anderson, Stuckey, Chris Raybon, Sean Kerner, myself, and our entire Action Network team. And you can also get those pro projections powered by the aforementioned Sean Kerner. If you're betting NFL props, you'll want to be paying attention to what Sean's putting out on the site and also on the app. And plus, you get a ton of other benefits. And to celebrate football's return, we've got a special offer. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and get $20 off the annual price with the promo code POD20. So don't miss out on the best bets at the best prices. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro and use the promo code POD20 to get $20 off a year of Action Pro. Brandon, we're back here, and let's go to that middle tier that you're looking at from worst to first. Perhaps, but only if you're going to take on the favorite, only as a direct bet against the favorite in the division. And we know who the favorite is in the AFC South. It is the Houston Texans. But like I've said, and being an Indianapolis Colts fan, everything you hear, how do you feel about your team? Well, it's the AFC South. So it feels like there's always a chance, even though Houston's kind of had control of this division over the last couple of years. But Brandon, the team that was at the bottom of this division last year under then first-year coach Brian Callahan were the Tennessee Titans, who are at 8-1 at various shops out there, including Caesars, to go ahead and win the AFC South. So break it down why you might have at least some scintilla of optimism about the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I'm going to start with the optimism, but then I'll give you some pessimism as well. So it starts with the division, of course, because I didn't really need to say a whole lot about the Colts and Jaguars. Just not super inspiring. I think a lot of folks are not super inspired by the Texans, but maybe the floor is a little higher than people think just because they're my number one defense, but I think everyone thinks they're at least a top 5 type defense. They're a great special teams unit year after year with coaching. And then the coaching staff has proven to be one of the best as well. So I get it. The offense disappointed. The offensive line maybe is worst in the league. And it could stay live in the division. It's been live the last couple years. Another one here where I want my sleeper. I got my Texans Island money, and then I've been chasing who's going to beat them now. And I lost some bets last year chasing. They do play 6 of their first 8 games, the Texans, against 10-win teams from last year, 10 or more. So I think that alone could keep the division live. And the Titans are another one of those most improved teams in the league. Again, when you're terrible, you get to improve a lot, right? All right, well, let me give you some sexy talk about offensive line and special teams. Bill Callahan, not Brian, Brian's dad, Bill, that's the offensive line guru. So they go out and they bring in Dan Moore and Kevin Zeitler, just veteran, quality, good starters. You get back center Lloyd Cushenberry, who's healthy again. You already invested a lot in the line. This was the worst line in the league a couple years ago. I think they could threaten top 10 once they get things together, especially once Callahan gets his hands on them. So that can rise the tide of the offense. Denard Wilson, the defensive coordinator, I thought he did a pretty good job last year, even with a relatively average group. And then under the radar, I think this team could have a monster special teams swing in their favor. Last year, the Titans were dead last in DVOA special teams. They had impossibly bad punting numbers. They were terrible returning kicks. They knew it. They went to Dallas and hired John Fossil, who's at a top 10 special teams unit 5 years in a row. That's hard to do. And they got a new punter, a new kicker, new kick returners. Everything is gone and they're starting over. They knew just how bad it was. Historically, special teams make up like 1/8 of what your team's overall rating is. That's not huge, but that's not nothing. That's 12.5% is 1/8. And if you were literally a negative version of that last year and might even be a positive this year, that's a huge, huge margin that they can get better. So the stuff we don't pay a lot of attention to, defense a little bit, offensive line, and special teams, I can get there on the improvement case. Does any of that excite you at all about Tennessee?
I feel like Tennessee might be like last year's Carolina, where there were a lot of things to kind of like and saying, hey, this division might be there for the taking because there's nobody there that really strikes fear in your heart necessarily in the division. But we saw that with Carolina last year, and
Yeah.
you mentioned it. I like them as well, and they were a great disappointment. And I think maybe that could be Tennessee, because this is an attackable division, because you have Houston, who, for the aforementioned reasons why there might be some room for them to decline a little bit. Jacksonville has a new coach. Is this finally the coach in Jacksonville, if Liam Cohen, that gets it right with Trevor Lawrence, where this offense can be really productive? And if Trevor Lawrence can take care of the football, that would certainly help. And then Indianapolis, who knows? They have some good weapons on that offense, but it is Daniel Jones that's going to be taking the reins there at starting quarterback, and not Anthony Richardson. So a transition year for the Colts too, with the change in ownership, with the sad passing of Jim Irsay, and you have a coach and you have a GM in Indianapolis very much on the hot seat. So I understand why maybe that there's a little bit of optimism for Tennessee, but you might be right. This might be a year early for them, and maybe it's next year. That third year, right? That third year of the new regime, where you see a lot of that improvement. We'll see what we see in the second year. I don't know if I can get there on the Titans. I certainly think that they're going to have at least some improvement. So I think maybe for an over-season wins bet, because this is a team that I think may struggle, but then they'll keep playing hard every single week, even if they're long eliminated from playoff contention, and they're going to knock a couple teams off late in the season. And that's kind of what I foresee for Tennessee, where they leave you with a good feeling, and then there's the big time optimism for year 3 in the 2026 season.
Yeah, I think so. And I think even more year 2 of Cam Ward, who we haven't talked about yet. And everyone wants to get excited about the number 1 pick. Weirdly, not a lot of buzz about Cam Ward. I think among recent number 1 quarterback picks, one of the under-discussed sort of guys. But a caution of betting on Tennessee this year. Over the last decade, we've had 8 number 1 pick quarterbacks. They average 3.4 wins as rookies. 3.4 is not a lot of wins. Sophomore season, 8.3. That's a big jump. But those rookie quarterbacks, 8 of them, not one has won more than 6 games as a rookie. Even in the AFC South, you got to win more than 6 to win the division. Like, mathematically, I'm pretty sure you still got to get to 7 wins somehow. And then Brian Callahan, last year, the Titans go 2-15 against the spread. Why does that matter? The spread is changing as the games go on in the season. We knew the Titans were bad. We kept, making the bar lower, and he still kept going under. He's like the limbo champion of the spread, that if you keep underperforming expectations game after game, and that's what the market is telling us, I do think that's a real data point. And then last thing here, even if you like Tennessee, even if you want to invest in the AFC South, week 1, Tennessee goes at Denver. That's your debut for your number 1 quarterback, your new offensive line at Denver, where nobody wants to play, at Vance Joseph's defense, that aggressive attacking defense against your brand new quarterback with no interior protection, figuring it out yet. You're going to lose value on your bet right off the bat, in all likelihood, with a likely loss there. At Houston, I think week 3 or 4, this is a team that keep your eye on them. Maybe they can get there. Maybe it's later in the year. But similar to the Saints, they were 16-1. The Titans are only 8-1. A team with this type of roster should be longer than 8-1, but they can't, because it's the AFC South. But if Houston wins some of these early games, and looks like we think they should, Titans lose and look ugly against Denver and Houston, now you get a better price. Now maybe you nibble a little bit later. So I'm not ruling Tennessee out. We said a lot of positive things about them. They'll get there, I think. When? In time? I'm not sure, but I'd need a better price to find out on them.
There are some folks out there that think that this team is going to get there, and I don't know if it's maybe by default, but that's in the AFC East with the New England Patriots at a little over 6-1, 6.25 to win this division. Now they've got the 800-pound gorilla in the division with Buffalo, but with not a lot of optimism about Miami and the Jets per se. New England, we've been looking at them, and it's like, man, it feels like they're overpriced, but there's only one team kind of standing in their way maybe in this division, Brandon.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a gorilla of a team. The Josh Allen last 5 years, 13 wins, 11, 13, 11, 13. So that's what we're looking at. We got to get to at least 11 wins. Josh Allen virtually guarantees you a top 3 DVOA offense unless he's injured. And frankly, Sean McDermott, he's had that high of a floor as well. So I'm not really looking for ways to have to bet against McDermott and Josh Allen, but unfortunately, that's what this whole podcast is about. We have to bet against the favorites. Probably a Patriots bet either needs Allen to get hurt or you got to beat him probably twice. So that's the bet. That's where you have to start here. But I think there's a lot to like about the Patriots this year. I think they are one of the most improved teams, maybe even more than Tennessee or the Raiders. They remind me a lot of last year's Commanders. They use a ton of cap room on floor-raising talent, just adding dudes all over the roster. You bring in the culture-changing coach, Dan Quinn, Mike Vrabel. You bring in the retread offensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury, Josh McDaniels. Maybe there's something there. Maybe they've found some new tricks. Can Drake May be Jaden Daniels? That sounds crazy. I'm really high on Drake May. I have him top of half of the league right now. I think by the end of the season, if things go well, he could be considered a top 10, top 8 type quarterback for this team. And I'm really high on the defense. I had them top 10 in my rankings. I mentioned the guys they went out and signed. Carlton Davis, really good corner with Christian Gonzalez now, maybe a top 5 corner pairing. Milton Williams, we saw him in the playoff run for the Eagles. Healthy Christian Barmore already on the roster. Great. We're great up the middle now. Robert Spillane, Harold Landry, just more dudes that are starters and eat up some bad minutes, basically, on your roster, some bad snaps. We already got all those weapons defensively, Jabril Peppers and a lot of other dudes. I think there's a lot to work with defensively on the roster. The offense, they got a long way to go, but they improved too. The line is going to start 2 rookies, so not great early, but heck, their line was terrible last year, as bad as anybody. So they get 2 new starters on the left. They get Garrett Bradbury and Morgan Moses. They're fine, but fine is better than what they've had. So 4 new starters will take some time, but end up in a better place. You get Trevion Henderson, great preseason, buzzy name for him, shooting up fantasy boards. Kyle Williams in the 3rd round at receiver. Stephon Diggs, hopefully healthy now. Again, not exactly singing the praises of this team, but hey, let's not be bottom 3 in skill position. Can we just have some guys? Can we be like 23rd rather than 30th here? That's kind of where the offense goes. So if you like the Patriots, you got to buy now, I think, because here's the opening month. Raiders, Dolphins, Steelers, Panthers. Hey, I can win those games. If I have a top 10 sort of defense, if I can figure things out while my line is gelling, while my young quarterback's getting going, I could maybe do that. Then they play the Bills, and that's your kind of swing point, obviously, on the division. The Bills are pretty soft schedule early on as well. They play the Ravens week 1, but then they're soft throughout, honestly. So I think if you want to bet on the Patriots, it probably would need to be now. I wanted this one. I wanted Patriots. I'm in on the defense. I love Drake May. I do think we have to remember that even if they're last year's Commanders did not go worst to first. They made the playoffs. They would have lost our bet if we bet them. So at 6.25, it's not quite juicy enough. I think this is one where a decade ago, the Patriots are terrible. And maybe they're like a 12-1. And we're like, oh, you know who I like? The Patriots. And I feel like books have maybe got a little bit ahead on the Patriots and robbed the value. So I don't see much value on the number, even if I like the idea.
So let's go to tier 2 here. And this one, I think, probably the most obvious one. This is a team I'm certainly high on, and for good reason. They went. It's hard to imagine this team went 6-11 last year, but with the amount of injuries that they had, not only on the offensive side of the ball, but on the defensive side of the ball, they were just a bare bones team at the end of the season. But we know that this team has a lot of success, and it seems like it's almost like every other year something goes wrong. This team has injuries, or something happens, and then the very next year they're one of the best teams in the league, and maybe that's going to happen this year with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, so not hard to imagine the Niners going worst to first. They're the favorites in the division right now by the betting odds, around plus 150, 165 at BetMGM is the best number I see. Yeah, you kind of said what we need to say about the Niners in a lot of ways. They lost so many injury guys last year. Multiple injury games. Let me just read through the list here. At least 2 games lost to Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Javon Hargrave, Dre Greenlaw, Charvarius Ward, and Taloa Hufanga. 83 games lost to those guys I just read off, most of whom are healthy now. Now, not the last 4 names on the defense. Those guys are gone, but are they really a loss to the team when they barely played last year anyway? I'm not sure that they are healthy. This team, if healthy, they're as good as anybody in the NFC. Kyle Shanahan has made 5 of the last 9 NFC championships as a coach. He's the Patrick Mahomes of the NFC, as I've been saying. Now, they're not healthy already, unfortunately. Brandon Ayuk, not ready yet. Jawan Jennings, already hurt. That guard that they found last year, Dominic Pudi, already injured on the line, and really only the second starter besides Trent Williams that's healthy. And we know Trent's probably going to miss a couple games at some point. Christian McCaffrey, probably going to miss a couple games at some point. But if healthy, this team is loaded. I love Robert Saleh coming back to lead the defense. There are definite weaknesses there at tackle and in the secondary, but that's a name I've been excited about since February when, honestly, this was my first bet of the season. 49ers Super Bowl ticket. So that's the case here is we don't need to sell you on the Niners. I'm in, Wes, you're in. We're high on the Niners.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the way to bet the Niners. I don't think you want, this is kind of like a median outcome, frankly. It's not for the other teams on here, but if the Niners win the division, that probably means they're pretty healthy and back to being the Niners. And if they win the division, you should be betting more aggressively. And plus 165 does not do it for me. Now you want an NFC ticket or a Super Bowl ticket. And now you got to believe in the long tail high end outcomes. I don't think you want to invest in a division ticket. Either it goes wrong and it's not there, or you get the really good part at the end. We know the schedule is crazy easy. They get to play the whole NFC South and AFC South. Thank you very much for those 8 games. We get Saints, Jaguars in September, so it probably looks good early. I will say the run defense was terrible last year. Week 1 in Seattle, that new Clint Kubiak run game, that could expose a little bit. You don't want to bet at a plus 165 and lose to a division rival right out of the gates. That's killer for a ticket like that. You don't need that risk. So to me, easy, obvious pick. Too boring for an island. We can't do Niners Island. That's not an island. It's like Niners Nation. There's way too much Niners hype. We'll bet them for other things more aggressively for high-end outcomes. Division's not the way to go.
Yeah, I have that same Super Bowl ticket that you have on the 49ers. I think if you're looking at a division bet, like if you're looking for value, that doesn't necessarily mean, okay, this ticket is gonna cash. Like there are good bets that don't win. I actually think the value in the division is the Arizona Cardinals. If you're wanting to just totally bet a division here in the West, I think it would be Arizona because the Rams, look, even before the injury to Stafford, I had some concerns a little bit about that team, even though I really like their defensive front. We were talking about how good the Giants' defensive front is. So is the Rams, but I was a little bit concerned about these guys. You have an older quarterback who's now dealing with injuries, so I felt like the Rams, and they're still a pretty young roster, by the way. I think they had 16 rookies on their active roster, so there's not a lot like in the middle. They're either older guys like Stafford or they're really super young guys, and then plus the travel. Only second to the Chargers. They crossed 44 time zones, 4 of the last 6 on the road. So I was a little bit down on the Rams. Not saying they can't make the playoffs, but I was a little bit down on them for the division. But Arizona is a team maybe that I think could get going. They have a good opportunity to get off to a good start with 3 home games against non-playoff teams. Road opener in New Orleans also in their first 5 games. So it's going to be that middle that determines. And we saw that last year with Arizona. They were right there to maybe make a playoff run. Then they lose inexplicably to a Carolina team that had really been struggling. So we'll see if they start off well again and then sputter at the end. But I think just from a pure value standpoint, Arizona in the West.
Yeah, I think the Niners are not the way to go from value. And like that's what we're always looking for is not, I don't want a winning ticket. I want to make some money. I want to get some value on my ticket and not just find a win. So that's where we end up with our island team kind of right in the middle there. I'm just going to jump into it. I get to reveal my island now. Let's go.
This is tier number one, by the way. Yes.
Tier number 1, Bears Island. All aboard, baby. Plus
Bear
550.
down Chicago Bears. Yes.
That's right. FanDuel, BetMGM, plus 550. Get your ticket in. I've long said my 2 favorite biggest edges on NFL, especially in futures market, are coaching and offensive line. So, of course, I got to be in on Chicago this season because they have 2 huge swings in those areas. The offensive line, long a weakness for the Bears. They go out and get Joe Tooney, Drew Dahlman, Jonah Jackson. Tooney's the best guard in the league. Drew Dahlman, top 5 center, giving a great center to a young quarterback. That's huge. Giving a great center to Ben Johnson, who just had one, and Frank Ragnow. That's huge as well. That goes weakness to strength. Out of the Bears' top 5 offensive line this season, and I mentioned his name already, and I mentioned it a few more times, Ben Johnson, the guy that everyone wanted, not just this coaching cycle, the last 3 coaching cycles, everyone wanted Ben Johnson. We don't know yet how he is as a head coach. I admit that. We know how he is as a play caller. He's top 3. He's as good as anybody calling the plays. We get offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, and we get defensive coordinator Dennis Allen. Love to hire my rejected, failed head coaches going back to the thing they know best, calling plays and leaving the other stuff to the other guys.
Isn't that like a drop-in class in horse racing, right? When they're in those big stakes race, and then they go back into the allowances, and then all of a sudden, run like they're thoroughbreds.
Exactly. And the coaching was so bad for this team last year. We get a rookie quarterback going through 3 different play callers in the year. The defense disappointed under Eberflus. Now I think you have what we don't know about the head coach, but just on play calling, top 5 combo, Ben Johnson, Dennis Allen. So that is a floor raiser and a ceiling raiser. That's rising tide for the whole team. That's better news for Roma Dunze, DJ Moore. I love rookie tight end Colston Loveland. We got Luther Borden, more weapons in the offense. And of course, it's better news for Caleb Williams. Now, a bit ago, we talked about Cam Ward. Don't bet on the number 1 quarterback. Okay, don't bet on the number 1 quarterback yet. But in year 2, the guy that won 3.4 games as a rookie over the last decade jumps to 8.3, 144% increase in wins. Caleb Williams feels disappointing from last season. He got no blocking, no coaching. His pet's head was falling off. He won 5 games. That's actually pretty good for number 1 rookie quarterback. It's only one off the best season in the last decade for a number 1 pick quarterback. 5 wins at 144% increase gets you to 12, and that might win the division. Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, all number 1 picks. Those guys, as rookies, combined for 5 wins, and then they won the division the next year. That's what we want Caleb Williams to do. He got 5 wins himself. Let's go win the division. Ben Johnson, I think, is a force multiplier for this team. What I mean is Ben Johnson's play calling makes the line look better because they're more attacking, they're more comfortable. Great. The line makes Caleb Williams look better. He's more confident. He's getting the ball out. Caleb Williams makes the playmakers look better. They get the ball. They're in the right spot. They're actually throwing DJ Moore passes rather than whatever the heck they were doing with him last year. And everything adds onto itself and gets better. We saw with the Lions, they went from 29th in DVOA offensively to 5th in Ben Johnson's first season calling plays with them. So why not the Bears? Get the same thing as the Lions. Great play from the line, rookie tight end breakout, improve playmaking, and that confident quarterback. That's the big question. Can they get the quarterback play? And I haven't said much about the defense, but I think they have top 10 potential as well. With Dennis Allen, they go out and restock the trenches. Grady Jarrett, Shamar Turner. They've already invested a lot in the defensive front. Jalen Johnson, I think, is a star corner that not a lot of people know about, but will this year. The Bears ended up, in my rankings, top 10 offense, top 10 defense. 5 teams in the NFL did that. The Super Bowl champ Eagles, the other team that was best in the league last year, the Ravens, the Niners, who we just talked about, my Vikings, and the Bears. That's a pretty good class of teams to be in. If you're top 10 offense and top 10 defense, you can win the division. I'm all in on the Bears team. What do you think?
Brandon, I love the case that you're making here, and especially what you mentioned about Ben Johnson. By the way, there's a reason why the Lions, who are certainly very talented, are getting steamed to the under on the season wins. I know I have a ticket on that already because you're going from Ben Johnson to John Morton as an offensive coordinator. That is a major drop-off, in my opinion, for Detroit. So I agree with all the case you made about Caleb Williams' development, about Ben Johnson, about the defense, but the one thing that holds me back on this team, the schedule doesn't look very easy, really up and down the lineup.
Yeah, schedule is rough. So let's talk about the schedule. So it's Minnesota and Detroit to start. So you can make a case, like I have on some other teams. Why now? Don't invest now. Let's let them fail a little bit early. Well, bad news. The schedule doesn't really get any better. They got to play the whole AFC North. They got to play the whole NFC East. However, let's talk this one through. Everyone in the division also has to play that same schedule. Your schedule is the same for 14 out of 17 games in the division. The 3 games that are different, the Bears get the Niners. That's unlucky. You got a 4th place team. It happens to be the Niners. But they also get the Saints and the Raiders. All right, thanks very much. Detroit, by reference, their 3 variable games are the Bucs, the Rams, and the Chiefs. No, thank you. I'll take the Saints and the Raiders. Thanks very much. So the schedule is tough, but it's tough for the 3 teams we have to bet against on this one as well. And let's check the beginning schedule again. Let's think of it through a Bears lens. Vikings, week 1, Monday night in Chicago. J.J. McCarthy is a rookie quarterback, basically. First game ever against Dennis Allen, and they're debuting not just McCarthy, but 3 brand new interior linemen, new center, new everything for J.J. McCarthy. Maybe not so bad for the Bears. Week 2, the Lions, 3 brand new interior linemen, second week in a row. They're missing guys on the D-line. Aleem McNeil and some of the others are out. They're debuting 2 new coordinators, John Morton and Kelvin Shepard. Great. Let's play the Lions early. While they're pretty weak, let's let the Bears be 2-0 in the division and have a huge head start early on. Week 3, Dallas. Again, 2 new coordinators, new offensive line names, early injuries on that team. Schedule isn't always who you play. Sometimes it's when you play them. And I think actually the schedule has really done Chicago accidentally some favors here. Get past those 3 games, and it's Raiders, Commanders. Bears fans remember that one. That did not go well last year. They're going to be up for that one. That was the Hail Mary. It turned the whole season around.
The Hail Maryland, as they say, yes.
Correct, yeah. Well, that's not what they say around here in Chicago, if I may say so. So Raiders, Commanders, Saints up next. This team, if they win those early division games, suddenly they're 4-2, 5-1, they're rolling. You could actually argue, I think, that the schedule is why you should bet division for Chicago. We're evening the playing field. The Vikings, Lions, Packers, they all going to play all those tough games as well, just like Chicago. So the whole division, I have top half of the league offense and top half of the league defense. That's crazy. I don't remember ever a division like that, but that includes Chicago. They're right in the mix. I don't think that they are clearly the best team in the division. I think that'd be an insane thing to say. Even as high as I am on the team, it's a really good division. I'm low on the Lions, and I still have them like a top 12 team in the league, even though they're last in my division. But I have the Bears right in the mix of things. I think the schedule actually breaks right for them out of the gates here, and they could be on the front foot. Ben Johnson leading the way. Why not Chicago? Plus 550 is a good number for a team as good as anyone else in the division. All aboard Bears Island. Next stop, playoffs. Let's go.
It's been a tough time in the Windy City, with the exception of your Cubs this season, as we see that Cubs jersey, if you're watching us on video, likely to be in the playoffs. But man, it hasn't been promising for the Bulls or the Blackhawks or the White Sox. Chicago is one of the great sports towns in America, and it's especially good when the monsters of the Midway are performing. So certainly going to be a better team in Chicago. We'll see if they're good enough to go ahead and go from worst to first in that division. Like you say, we do have a favorite at the top that we could certainly, I think, attack in Detroit. Just some declines in the coaching staff and maybe just some natural regression coming. So, you know what? I'll go aboard Bears Island with you, Brandon. I'm going to put a ticket. I'm going to put a ticket in on Chicago to go ahead and win that division. So excited to get to the season, and was excited to talk to Brandon here. So want to thank to the audience for listening to our NFL worst to first episode, from the outhouse to the penthouse. We'll see if Chicago or any of these teams are going to get there. So thank you, Brandon, for joining me. Coming up this week, by the way, you're going to see more of Brandon because we got our final NFL preseason episodes. Brandon is breaking down all the position rankings from quarterback secondary, to offensive line, defensive line, what have you. He's also going to have a pod on his upcoming awards picks, so you definitely don't want to miss that. And also NFL exotics for the upcoming season. So a lot of exciting things, a lot of exciting content coming to Action Network here in a couple weeks. We're just 2 weeks away. We've been waiting all summer for the NFL, and now it's finally here. So, Brandon, thanks again for joining me, and want to wish our audience best of luck on all your bets. And we're going to see you back here next time on the Action Network podcast.